Anybody heard that?
Let's go ahead and get this started again. Go ahead and stay on for us if you're wishing to stay. And we'll be getting through this as quickly as we can. Next item on our agenda is a request for the acceptance of the Federal Aviation Administration Coronavirus Aid Relief Economic Security CARES Grant Act, or grant, and there's no local matching funds required. Is Mr. Childers here? Or?
He's in front of you.
Oh, I am so sorry.
I know it's been a long night. I'll try to make it any longer for
The
you.
eyes are glazed over. Thank you. I appreciate you being there.
Thank you, Chairman May, members of the board. I'll try to keep this as brief as possible. And I know you all just got a copy of this on the dais in front of you right before the board meeting. I do apologize for that. I'll give you a little explanation in detail on that after I get through the agenda item. But first I want to thank Brandy Rosser, our General Services Director, for putting together this agenda item for us late this afternoon. I was out of the office and unable to. But with that said, the Coronavirus Aid Relief Economic Security, or CARES Act, passed by Congress and signed into law by the President in late March of this year, includes $10 billion in funds to be awarded as economic relief to eligible U.S. airports affected by the prevention of, preparation for, and response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The CARES Act provides funds to increase the federal share to 100% for airport improvement program projects and supplemented by discretionary grants already planned for in fiscal years 2020. Under normal circumstances, AIP grant recipients contribute a matching percentage of the project costs. Those are the local shared costs that I've talked about before when I've discussed airport grant projects with you. Providing this additional funding through the CARES grant funding and eliminating the local share will allow critical safety and capacity projects to continue as planned regardless of airport sponsors' current financial circumstances. Additionally, the CARES Act provides new funds distributed by various formulas for all airports that are part of the national airport system. This includes all commercial service airports, all reliever airports, and some public-owned general aviation airports, which Front Royal Warren County Airport is a general aviation airport. The general aviation airports, such as ours, will receive these funds based on certain airport categories such as national, regional, local, which we are, local airport, basic, and unclassified status. Front Royal Warren County Airport has received a CARES Act grant offer with a maximum obligation of the FAA of $30,000. This funding will be used toward payment on existing hangar loans, an expense that has been deemed allowable by the FAA. The period of performance is 4 years, and it commences on the date the sponsor, the county, formally accepts the agreement. To properly enter into the agreement, Warren County must do the following. The governing body, yourself, the Board of Supervisors, must provide authority to execute the grant to the individual signing the grant, the sponsor's authorized representative. The sponsor's authorized representative must execute the grant followed by the attorney's certification no later than July 3rd, 2020 in order for the grant to be valid. Warren County cannot make any modifications to the text, terms, or conditions of the grant offer. And that's typical standard procedure in dealing with the FAA grants. We cannot make any changes to them. We accept as it is or not. And 4, the grant offer must be electronically signed by the sponsor's legal authority, and then the grant offer will be routed via email to the sponsor's attorney. Once the attorney is electronically attested to the grant, an email with the executed grant will be sent to all parties. A copy of the CARES Act Airport Grant Agreement has been included for review, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have. Again, the grant funding will go to pay off our current hangar loans, and as Chairman May indicated, if we do accept the offer, there will be no local match required. As I mentioned earlier, I know you got this one short notice, and again, I apologize for getting it to you late. But when we submitted the original application in May of 2020, like a lot of the COVID and CARE Act information came out with very little instruction. We submitted an application for $30,000 in the middle of May, and I was listed as the contact person for the county for any questions and the follow-up grant. I was to be contacted by the FAA. I confirmed that with our local FAA engineer that we deal with. Unfortunately, I was not. As I mentioned in the agenda items, that all this is going to be done electronically. Well, unbeknownst to me until just today, this process was going to be handled electronically, and I was not the one receiving the notices, which started earlier in June. They were coming directly to Mr. Stanley. However, they were getting hung up in his spam email. So Mr. Stanley wasn't aware until about the last week that this grant was coming from the FAA. And on the surface, it didn't even look like an FAA document. So through some calls and dialogue with our FAA reps today, we got it straightened out. And that's the reason why we had to hastily put it on your all's agenda tonight without a lot of notice. Again, I apologize for that, but if we don't act tonight, give Mr. Stanley the authority to sign the grant, and in turn, Ms. Jordan to countersign it, we'll miss out on the funds. We have to have it taken care of the 3rd of July, and regrettably or fortunately, we all don't meet again the 21st or 3rd of July. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
You say unfortunately or fortunately?
Either way, however you want to look at it.
So just to make sure I understand, it's $30,000 to pay off the loans for the hangars, and there's no local money involved whatsoever.
It will go toward paying off those.
Well, go
Yes,
towards it, but
yes,
there's no local match.
Yes, sir.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Yep.
Have you verified that paying off your loans is a viable or an approved amount under the CARES Act or approved action?
Yes, and and I asked that question back in May before I submitted the application, because typically the feds or state won't go pay off hangar loans.
Right.
But if you look into the actual grant, it's 20-some pages, and I certainly didn't expect you all to have that read, but it specifically says at the bottom of page 3, such purposes can include the reimbursement of an airport's operational and maintenance expenses or debt service payments.
One question, if you will. Which hangars, there's more than just a couple of hangars out there that we owe money on, is there not? I mean, there's several of them.
Yes,
Which ones with this?
Several sets of hangars, yeah. And there's actually 2 separate loans
Okay.
in place. One is a 30-year loan and one is a 10-year loan. And as of the first of this past year, around the 1st of January, the balance on those loans were approximately $500,000.
It's not going to go very far.
No, sir, but it'll be a bite out of it, yes, sir.
Yeah.
I'd say that the sooner you can pay off that 10-year loan, as soon as we pay that loan off, then all those revenues start coming to the bottom line as
Yes.
revenue.
Direct revenues, yes.
To help the bottom line of the facility. So that's, ultimately, that's one of the ways that, chief way that airports are able to generate a positive cash flow is to not only build hangars, but to pay them off so that that revenue is coming in
That's correct.
to support operations.
Hangar revenues and fuel sales are the primary 2 sources of revenue for any general aviation airport such as ours.
And we've done pretty well with going forward with building hangar space out there.
Yes. In fact, we built 7 new T hangars about, I believe it was about 7 years ago.
Are we going to be able to meet all the requirements for this? I mean, we obviously haven't been able to read it, and
Yes, sir.
there's a lot of stuff here.
Yes, sir.
I we're gonna vote on this right now, and you're telling me that we will be able to meet all of the requirements to get this $30,000.
Yes, yes. And if it gives you any comfort level, most capital grants that this board, the county enters into with the FAA for that 9% funding level that we get from them, a lot of this information is boilerplate and consistent with each grant we enter into them with. And we haven't had a problem in my history with the county, so yes, sir.
Mrs. Jordan, do you have any trouble? You're our counsel on this?
Yes, I have taken a look at the agreement, and there's nothing in here that gives me pause, especially if Mr. Childress can verify that we are able to meet the requirements of what's in here.
Thank you.
Entertain a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Board of Supervisors accept the CARES Act grant offer in the amount of $30,000 to assist with costs associated with existing tanner loans. I further move that the Board provides signatory authority to the county administrator so that he can execute the grant before it is sent to the county's attorney to be attested.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Shiraki, could we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Fox?
Aye.
Ms. Colors? Mr. May?
Aye.
Ms. Oates?
Aye.
Mr. Carter?
Aye.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Now, we do have a closed session, just,
We can go in there for that, yeah.
okay, thank you.
Good evening.
Yeah, you can go ahead and give us your presentation for the body worn camera systems, Mr. Butler.
I appreciate it, Sheriff Butler. One County. In January, when I took over, we went through and we did an audit of our entire department. One of the very first things that we found was that our body-worn cameras were about way past out of date. Half of them were inoperable. The Commonwealth Attorney's Office was having trouble getting the downloaded information. That makes a very, very bad situation. So I talked with John Bell, and I asked him, I said, hey, what do you think about this? And because I believe we should take them off the street. It just doesn't look good. It's just a bad combination of everything. He agreed. We immediately started looking into a grant and looking at the different body-worn cameras that are out there. Front Royal PD has the WatchGuard body-worn camera. It seems to be very good. They've been tested, tried. They love it from everyone I talked to. They're very costly. So when I asked to set up a meeting with WatchGuard, they came in and gave me all bells and whistles, and it was like $250,000. And I was like, that's not happening, because I know where we're at. So I looked at it and I said, Major, get to work. And we all know how hard my major works on grants and everything else. Between myself and my major, we found a grant. It's a 50-50 grant. We applied for it. It's under review at this point in time. We will not probably get a complete return until September. During that time, we also had to develop a new policy for body-worn cameras so we could not only meet CALEA, but the LESP accreditation standards. During this time, a lot of work has been done, and we've been working very diligently. I understand the restraints we're at. We all spoke for the last 6 months. I've never come to you and asked you for something I wanted. I've come for stuff I need. Today's society has changed my position. I can no longer have my deputies without body-worn cameras. Our county can no longer allow our deputies to go without body-worn cameras. We need to be transparent to protect not only our community, but our deputies that are working the street. So I called WatchGuard back in. The grant we've written is a 50-50 grant, like I said. There's several ways we can go about it. We can buy 40 cameras. It'll be approximately $45,000. The grant's for $41,800. So we're looking at about $3,500 out of pocket for 40 body-worn cameras. Our servers are good enough, have plenty of storage that we can hardline them through. So we'll just have to take this apple, instead of eating the whole apple at once, we can bite it one little bite at a time. These cameras are state-of-the-art, have been tried and tested. There's a cloud and there's a bunch of other different avenues we can go with these body-worn cameras. Our in-car cameras are outdated. They're L3. We've called L3. They're the same ones as our body cameras. We do want to switch over to have everything on one platform, but we realize of the situations we're all in. I mean, nothing beats me with a bat every time I call them. I'm just kidding. I mean, but we really are working. We're trying to get more with less. So what I'm asking you to do is, yes, I need somebody. I need another position to manage the body-worn cameras, but the body-worn cameras, if the grant is fulfilled, will be free. For the most part, minus $3,500. We're not going to know that until September and the grant comes in. I can't guarantee that. Can't guarantee that the grant we're going to get. Just don't know how we can say no to the technology that can actually save a lot of heartache, lawsuits, and so forth. So I'm asking. I'm not going to ask you for the bodies right now. We'll figure it out. My major, my captain, myself, we will work the 50%, other 50% side of it by managing the program and so forth. You're asking a lot out of my major, my captain, and myself, on top of what we're doing already. It is evidence, so we want a sworn officer to actually control that evidence. Make sure the equipment's trained, or everybody's trained, equipment's up to date, everything's running accordingly. So I am asking, I will be coming back later, but right now, I'm just asking for the $4,500 to buy the cameras. I can also defer the payment. One way or the other, I'm gonna buy the cameras for my deputies. But right now, we can't wait. That's why I'm standing in front of you today, is we can't wait. We need to buy the cameras. If we say yes, and we get approval from the Board of Supervisors, every single deputy working the street will have a camera on them within 6 weeks. That's something I don't think we put a price tag on it. So we could have gone for all the bells and whistles. I'm not asking for that. As we buy a car, we'll buy an in-car camera with it. We'll budget it as it comes. We weren't aware of all these issues in January. Or this would have already been in my budget, guaranteed. So what I'm asking you is this. Buy the cameras. If we get the grant, which I do think we have a very good shot at getting, we're really only out $3,500 for right now. And then I'll ask you for the position. position to manage the system. But you asked me to come to you with what I need. My deputies need body-worn cameras. Our society needs my deputies to have body-worn cameras. And so it's more of a, almost a beg. Give my deputies the equipment they need.
Sheriff Butler, I have a question. Isn't it a requirement of the state of Virginia for them to wear body-worn cameras?
No, ma'am.
What,
But
because,
if you want to be
so we had
equipped,
to hire somebody to actually review body-worn cameras in the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. So if it's not a requirement for you guys to wear them, why is that a requirement?
So if you have one body-worn camera, either at the sheriff's office or the town of Front Royal PD, Warren County has to have a position in our Commonwealth Attorney's Office to review that.
Yeah.
Sheriff's Office could have 0, and I've reached out to KL, and I think they're looking at, 26, and it's an important number, because I'd asked Mark, as confirmed, I think we're talking ultimately 40.
get 40 cameras.
40 plus 26, 66, that's important. Once we hit 75, we have to hire a second position in the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office. That was my only real concern once outside the grant, is because I know that position has a hefty price tag.
Yes, it
with
does.
benefits and stuff.
Elliot,
But yeah, Mark doesn't have anybody. Front Royal PD has one person. We still have to pay for a position in the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office.
Is there a way that we can go and join Front Royal, or the town of Front Royal Police and getting the cameras jointly and maybe get a discount or no? Is that an option?
You're probably buying off state contracts, so
We
really
are.
it won't matter.
It's
Yeah.
state
Doesn't
contract.
matter, all right.
Because we literally beat them down. As I've gone over 500 different ways I can purchase these cameras and purchase the system. And the guy sat down and he goes, okay, obviously I'm not selling you the full house. That did not happen. Because it's roughly about $33,000 a year on contract.
So Sheriff Butler, your system that you're purchasing, does it automatically upload to the servers, or do you have to go into the office and manually upload it?
We have to go in and put them in a base, and then it'll download at the end of the
Okay.
shift. I'm familiar with that same type of camera. It works very well if handled properly. But there are, if you don't have someone managing the system, you're talking about possibly losing evidence in the long run. And that's something we definitely do not want to do. But like I said, we will work through that until we get the grant. When we get the grant, then it's a moot point. But I'm asking for you guys to really consider letting this have and be transparent, that we know we're the professional sheriff's office that we are. We welcome it, all our deputies welcome it. And I can tell you as a young officer, I didn't want a body-worn camera. And I was one of the first people that tried it and earned it. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm a law enforcement officer. I shouldn't have to wear a camera. And the first time someone complained on me and my body-worn camera basically cleared me of all actions, I was a firm believer of that body-worn camera. I think this is a no-brainer for us. One civil lawsuit pays for these cameras. I'm not asking for all the bells and whistles. I'm not afraid to roll up our sleeves and work. But what I am asking is for you to consider purchasing the cameras. The grant comes in, then I'll ask for the position. But until then, I'm just asking for the cameras.
Are 40 cameras going to cover all of your staff that need them?
Yes, ma'am. 100%. We will be 100% covered.
Mr. Chairman, Jackson?
Yes, sir.
Basically, we have a pocket we could pull from.
So Mark, walk me through, all right, so for the 40, now we had 50 in here in the packet, so
Right.
what's the amount for the 40?
It comes up roughly at $45,000.
Okay, so we would pay the 45, and then hopefully you get the grant that only cover. So my suggestion, if we can wait 7 John's in the back, 7 days, get to July 1, drop the order at that point, so we can hopefully deal with the cost and the receipt of the grant in the same fiscal year. Does that make sense, John?
You can order it today, and as long as it's not delivered until July 1, then it's not considered a fiscal year
Okay.
2020 expenditure.
Well, here's the caveat. I was saving this for last.
Okay.
I can defer the payment.
I'm trying to make math work for us.
I can defer the payment.
Okay.
So, we can pay half of it. That's why I said I'm getting the cameras, one way or the other. I can defer it. But I'm just saying, right now, I need you all to, until this grant comes in, I need y'all to arm my deputies with a sense of security.
It's gonna be 6 weeks before you ever get the first.
Yes,
camera.
yes, but if the day you guys approve it and we sign that PO, I can fax that PO to Watchdog, and they are a state mandated, are a state contract. And they will automatically start working on our process.
Mr. Chairman, so tonight we're in a work session, so we can't officially approve the purchase tonight. I think we can get a consensus and have it retroactively approved at our July 21st meeting. And I think that's really about tonight is the board supportive of the request, or if you need any additional information, but and certainly staff can take a hint if the board supports it. But it sounds like it's timely for the sheriff to get moving on it.
It is, and I enjoy coming up in front of this work group, because it's a way for me to answer questions and it tell you what we're trying to do a lot easier, I believe. This way, if you think I need to make a different route, I'll attempt it, but I can tell you, I have exhausted every avenue I know to go. And our deputies need this. It's a need, it's not a want.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to make a motion, of course, but I would suggest that we go forward and support the sheriff on this endeavor.
Yeah, I agree.
Everybody's in agreement?
Yeah, but I had a question.
Yes, sir.
And then there, it was a little bit confusing with the cover page, talking about 50, and then you come back to 40, and that's fine, you're trying to get this thing done, I appreciate that. But originally you were looking for 50, now you're okay with 40, why the difference there?
We had to reach a certain level for the grant.
Okay.
And when I finally sat down and mapped out all my positions, all my people, I looked at my major and he's like, well, we can do 25 and then our deputies would have to share them.
Yeah.
But this way we'll have some extra cameras. So if one does break and we're waiting for it to be replaced, that deputy can grab another camera and automatically be assigned.
That's kind of the other question that you kind of touched on, and as far as sharing, obviously it's probably better for each deputy to have their own camera. But they could do that as well, because you only have so many on patrol at any one time. Does this include the folks at the courthouse as well?
It's going to include some of them.
Okay.
Because we do have cameras all throughout the courthouse, but our people on transports, they will have them. Our SROs will have them, and so on. And actually, some of our more aggressive, I should say, or proactive investigators will also have them.
And then you said too, you go to 40, and you talked about us putting up maybe $3,500 or $4,500, but that's hopefully that you get the grant, it takes it off. If you don't get the grant, then we'd be responsible for the entire amount.
Correct.
But it still needs to be done, so that's fine.
It does.
And the other thing too is, and Mr. Stanley touched on, I was concerned, I was gonna bring up, but he already did, but we're only talking about body cameras as far as when you have to hire another CA assistant to review the tapes and stuff like that. Does that include the
We
card?
wouldn't need it at this level.
But I'm saying though, does that, I know it says body worn cameras, but does the car cameras, do they count in that total?
No, sir.
Okay. Because that was a concern I had, because like I said, especially if you're getting 50 and the town had 26.
Oh, no, I don't believe they, because we already have in-car cameras.
No. I'm talking about body cams.
Right.
If you got the 50, the town had 26.
Then we'd be in
trouble.
trouble.
Another CA assistant.
Then we'd be in
They
trouble.
were spending $75,000 a year for another position.
Right, and so this way, we're able to work both angles and actually save all the way around.
Like I said, I think they're needed. I support it. I just want to be careful.
No, I'm with
Going
you.
over that 75, which you're aware of and cognizant of, and keeping tabs on it. So, like I said, I'm good to go.
Thank you. Mrs. Sharkey, could we put that on the agenda on the 21st of July?
So I'll have the consensus of the board being to support the purchase of the 40 body-worn cameras to be placed on the agenda for the July 21st, 2020 meeting for formal retroactive approval.
Correct.
Thank you.
And that way we'll be able to go ahead and get the order in, we'll have the approval before they arrive, so it should be good.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the coronavirus relief fund payments. Mr. Farrell.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, try to make this as painless as possible given the hour. So you have this package in front of you. The first cover sheet here is pre-decisional, and it's just a place for us to start the conversation with. And I just want to run through the packet real quick. I don't expect you to look at everything tonight, but it's just so we're all on the same sheet of music. So underneath the cover sheet, you have the percentages of businesses in different tiers. This is the same structure that the town is using in their proposal. So Sherry did this for us for the county businesses. After that, you have the 4H Center document. Right now, this is the only hard request that we have, and you'll see those numbers on the front. You've got some other numbers for the Sheriff's Office and Fire and Rescue, so as we talk about the cover sheet and I talk about that $500,000 or so a month in payroll, this is the document that we'll reference there. And then the rest of the documents after that are copies of everything that we submitted to get the money. There's the frequently asked questions dated May 28th, which is the latest copy of the frequently asked questions. And then at the very end, you have the towns, some of the town's proposals, so you know what the town is thinking as well. So for this evening, what I'd like to talk about this evening is really, it's three things. It's coming to some consensus on the broad categories. And the broad categories I have for conversation are small business, schools, locality, and utilities. The percentages that we would like to assign to those broad categories. And then finally, how you want us to manage the program. And the two options that we've talked about thus far is either having the EDA manager for the county and the chamber managers for the town, or we could have the chamber manager work, God bless you, for both of us. We could have the chamber manager for both of us to keep it consistent. So we need to discuss that. So on the cover sheet here, if we could talk for a moment about the broad support categories. You see that I have laid out small business at 50%, schools at 30%, and that's specifically for broadband. I did talk to Ms. Shepard, and she's not going to ask us for any other CARES Act money because she has her own pot of school dedicated CARES Act money. I have
So does that go, I'm sorry, does that go away then?
Does what go away?
The school portion at 30%?
No, I just have it listed one line item for us as broadband for the schools. So she's not going to ask for broadband right now, but she's also not going to ask the county for any CARES Act funds beyond what she already has. I think she has about 800,000 herself, and she's got to distribute, I think, 100 to private schools, and she keeps the rest. So she already has a plan for that number.
So that dollar amount that's under schools, that's going to be designated broadband, because there's a zero in front of broadband.
So right now, what I did was at 30% of the county's allocation would be the 638. I left the zero there because we haven't committed that amount to that line item, right?
Rick, if I can just jump in, so, you know, we understand from some of the board members that broadband is important, and the CARES Act, the language that we've seen so far basically says that you need to encumber, you need to spend, and the work needs to happen, and the work's going to have to happen this fall so that students can take advantage of it. And currently, I've been talking the last 3 weeks probably with Comcast to say, you know, we've got maps of the area, I've shared those with you. We've actually, the school's about 4% of their students don't have broadband access. The Comcast map's not complete for us, so our numbers will higher because there is some CenturyLink coverage in those areas. Now, it's CenturyLink is not as good a service as, maybe the 25 plus miles per minute, or it's like whatever, MBS that you can get with Comcast, but maybe it's 10. But they're showing their numbers, there's about 4% or 200 and some kids that did not have access, that doesn't mean they're paying, access to broadband. So what we've done is try to at least take the areas of the county that are not served by Comcast and identify the addresses of the school students. This is will be K through 11, which will be next year's 1st through 12, will not include the kindergartners yet, to see, and we're looking to see where's the greatest density. Let's say we do 10 miles. Do we pick the most dense 10 miles? Do we try to split up and put a couple miles in each magisterial district? Just to try to get an idea of if we were able to do something, what would that look like and how many students would be impacted? Now, it's not only students, it's also can be for helping to support people telecommuting to their jobs, and that's the side benefit. It's a lot easier for us to count school children who would be impacted. So at least with Comcast, we're trying to get a handle. And of course, the big piece is, if there was some money available, or if you come to an agreement and have a contract, could you get the work done? Meaning, could you put people out in the street and string the cable and get people hooked up so that it actually impacts them? I had a conversation today with Virginia Broadband LLC. They're another provider that is already in a little snippet of Warren County, and just trying to reach out, because there are obviously other options out there. And I've talked to some folks at CenturyLink. I know they've gone in the last year and run fiber down to Browntown, down Browntown Road. We don't have it over to Bentonville from that location. But, it's, maybe this is more than one vendor. Maybe it's one vendor. But just trying to look at how quickly people could respond, because we don't have a lot of time to move on this.
Now, if I understand this correctly, and maybe we've had a little bit of conversation, and I just wanted everybody to hear it. In some of these cases, and we need to figure out these cases, there may be Comcast right on the pole that runs up the road, but the customer is not using it. Now that means that they're going to have to run a cable to the house, and they're going to have to pay for their service, unless those children are on the free lunch program.
If you're on a free lunch program, Comcast will give them service for free. Another option could be that we could put some of the 638 into a fund that people could apply for a grant to help pay for their broadband, through December, and say, here's $200 to help pay your. Now the problem is, once you cut that check, you have no control over
what they actually do with the money.
So certainly that's a thought. That's something we could talk about.
But you've got to get the names and addresses and locations of all of these children before you can make any of those decisions, and that has to happen quickly.
And we've got the addresses of the kids that say aren't in a current area that's served by Comcast. We've got that. What I don't have is, a child that maybe lives out in the county that has Comcast, goes in front of their house, and they don't have access. Again, the school system is saying only about 4% or 200 and some kids are signed up that don't have broadband access.
So, let me finish the broad categories first. I'll come back to that. So, small business, schools, but really schools is broadband. We have the locality, which is us, so any money that we would like to recoup. I'll come back to specifics of that in a moment. And then the final category to kind of match the town is utilities. That will be a catch-all for the town. Their primary goal is for business utilities that are in arrears, but they will also address individual citizens, individual account holders, if they have utilities in arrears. So that would be the four broad categories. So these numbers that are in yellow, I I don't want you to get stuck on the numbers, because if you all decide that we only want to give 40% to small business, then we recalculate the numbers. So really, it's the, do we have the right broad categories? Are you thinking we need to have other broad categories? And what do you think about the percentages assigned to those categories? Would be my first question for you.
I mean, it can be changed at any time. I mean, like what you said, we can adjust it as we go. I mean, if we think that broadband is only going to take $500,000, then that's what they get.
Then we remove the balance.
Then we remove the balance, put it someplace else. Okay, I'm okay with that.
Under localities, aren't we doing some of those things through the FEMA? Can you do under both?
No, and yes. So no, we can't do them under both, and yes, we are doing them under FEMA. So in particular, the 4-H center quarantine contract and the thermal shelter, I just put that there for discussion because there is a piece with the state that we have to have a letter from the state in order to give it to FEMA, and some of those dates don't line up. So the state is doing a blanket first responder quarantine letter for everybody, but that might have ended in mid-June, right? So we have a contract through the end of June, so we might be able to recoup that other piece of June under the CARES Act. So again, it's just there for these are the kinds of things that we could spend money on the county side. You notice I don't have any dollar amounts there, it's just for conversation right now.
So we entered into a contract with the 4-H center to provide the services if we needed it.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. First responder salaries.
So when you read the CARES Act, which I have all of that in the package for you, the Sheriff's Office salaries, Fire and Rescue salaries, and some of the DSS salary, if we had it on the county side for the protective service workers, the CARES Act does consider that essential to COVID. And to keep it easy, the language even says that, we're not going to split hairs. You can count that salary as a legitimate expense. So if we did get in a bind and we couldn't spend the money, we can always come to salary and have a placeholder for the money. Right? That
And,
makes sense.
Later we get reimbursed for salaries that we spent. A year from now, if we decide, hey, now we've got some broadband thing, but once it flows to the budget, the board could allocate that over and sit on it if it wanted to. But you'd still be able to get the funds and hold them for whatever purpose you want to use them for.
But the only reason I asked that is because I thought that was what we were doing, we was going to use FEMA funds, and I realized that's only 75%, where this, technically you could do 100% under, but then that makes it less to go to individual people that have been hit hard, businesses that that haven't been able to open during this whole time. Whereas we have been able to pay our salaries.
There's two parts to that.
Okay.
So the FEMA, we can only claim overtime to FEMA. This money right here is only the salary and does not include overtime. So again, it's just a placeholder that if we didn't come up with enough good ideas in time, that this is a default that we can fall back on.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, because my main, it'd be nice to be able to have enough, but I feel like the people that have been impacted the most need to be our first priority. Even though I'm wanting broadband, because I think that's going to be a long time aid in whatever school looks like, people's jobs. You can telework, but depending on where you live in the county, you can't telework.
Right.
So it puts you between a rock and a hard place there.
The only thing though that I will remind us all with the broadband is it has to be paid for, and we have to get some benefit for it under the emergency, because once the schools go back to no more distance learning, then we can't do it.
Right, and why the government didn't, if they were gonna tell us that we could use this for broadband and give us a longer time period for broadband, doesn't make any sense to me, and I still think we need to start sending letters for them to think about that. Because maybe it was an oversight on their part, because realistically, to say you can use this for broadband and think you're gonna get it done in 5 months because it takes you a month to organize all this stuff is just not good thinking.
Just a side thought on that, a lot of the people that make these decisions are looking at metrics numbers that say 98% of the country has broadband already.
They need to come to my end of the calendar.
I know, they do. And it's like the cellular companies, they'll say that 99% of the people get coverage. You go down to Browntown and you can't get it. I don't care who.
And not just Browntown, you can go to Front Royal, Chester,
Sure.
Mass. Yeah.
But they fall into that weird area. Okay.
Rick, is there any provision for, so the most vulnerable in the COVID situation are elderly. And so is there any provision that we could use to bolster like their PPEs, the things that are available to these nursing facilities that are independent? They aren't public per se. They're private homes. Can we use the money for that?
Well, I can answer that. It's separately, right now, all of our nursing homes are doing very well with PPE. We are giving Woods Cove PPE right now, and actually some of the other nursing homes in the area are also donating PPE to them. Under a non-outbreak situation, their parent companies have them covered.
Okay.
With the outbreak, just like with the jail, there's such a demand for a short period of time, that's where we come in and help them out. And that's where the Virginia Department of Emergency Management then gives us some PPE back, which I've already put that request in because of Woods Cove.
But if we were to have to pay for that, that would be funds that we could get reimbursed relatively quickly.
Or FEMA.
Well, the FEMA is where we're doing most of our PPE reimbursement with. Now, if you're saying specifically to the nursing homes, I would have to look into that a bit more.
They're the highest risk. I mean, moving forward, that's your highest risk community. So I would like to see some allocation to the highest risk communities so that, because, COVID is not going to go away. I mean, and the numbers prove that that is the highest risk community. So what can we use this money for in order to help the highest risk communities avoid the possibility of getting it in the future, well beyond December? Is there something we can provide them?
I would think too, Rick, that even once this CARES Act money is gone, we're still providing PPE. We're still there as support for them through the pandemic and on forward. Would you agree to that?
With
your contact care facilities?
Where's the fallback? Yeah, I mean, so again, a good example is with Woods Cove. They can't put an order in right now and get it in time.
Right,
So
because
that's
they
why-
have an
that's why they
outbreak
come
at
to us.
that, they have an outbreak at that facility.
That's right.
And so that's what I'm thinking of, if there were ways that we could maybe minimize their people in and out, the rotation of their employees, if there's some.
They're doing all of that.
They're doing all that.
Yes.
Because I was hoping that we could help fund that out of this money if that was possible.
Well, I think the best course of action for us would be to replenish our PPE stocks.
Okay,
And then when somebody in the community says, I gotta have some now,
then we have the
then we
ability
can-
to support
that's
that.
right.
Example, today, the hospital called me up, nice folk, they called me up and says, we need sanitizer. We got it on order, can't get it, we need sanitizer. I said, how many gallons do you want? And we'll have it to you tomorrow.
So we have stored sanitizer.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'd just like to target the most vulnerable with these funds. I think that's really what they were intended to do, to help with the most vulnerable community, to help with the largest economic impact community, which are, were businesses that were considered non-essential. and had to shut down, were forced to shut down, they had no choice. And so I'd like to see that's where I think these funds should go.
Now, if someone is, say, an elderly couple or depending on their age, private homeowner, they still live in their own home, and they can show that utilities money is just, they can bring in bills that show that they have not been able, and then we pay their bills.
So I think the way, and I was the one that asked Rick to put this on the list. So social services, we get about 20,000 per year, and we, from the state, and run it through DSS. So people have to qualify for it, but can apply for, it's not much money, 20,000 doesn't go very far when you're talking about a community our size. So I was trying to put another piece there, and I've asked Deanna to come up with kind of some guidelines and timeframe, or what period we talked about, because this will go into the fall. But to try to come up with the criteria, but using the program they already have so that people can apply through. So these would be people in need that meet the, in my theory, the income eligibility. If you make $250,000 a year, don't come ask for this little bit of amount we got. You would need to meet the Dss criteria. And what we're doing is we're taking their pot of $20,000 and trying to expand that by 106 to give them additional capacity to help people who are in that vulnerable sector. And that's the individual piece that we have here. Because individuals, some have gotten their federal stimulus checks, all that other stuff. But this is trying to target, and these folks may already be probably more likely getting additional DSS assistance, or could be unemployment, could be other things, but this will be targeted for utilities. And again, for us, because the town's doing it inside town limits, we're looking at folks outside town limits to help with their utility bills.
But isn't there a population that isn't DSS served that was greatly impacted by this? These are the people that live on the edge. These are the ones. How do we can we have an applicant process for people like that? I understand the DSS, but they already get services and have been getting services. And where I think this money is best spent is to that population that, was forced out of, for instance, a hairdresser, who makes minimal anyway, who doesn't apply for DSS on a regular basis, but couldn't work for 8 weeks or 10 weeks.
I think you just have to come up with criteria. What criteria do you want to?
Well, and they have shops. I can think of several off the top of my head that, they were out of business 3 months.
Yeah.
3, 4 months.
Those are the people that
They had to pay rent. They had
That
to
would be
pay
the business
bills.
piece.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this would be, and again, 106 is, let's say, say you had, a couple hundred people, 200 or 300 people. At 200 people, it's going to be $500 to help them for this whole period. It's not going to be a lot.
Well, they would also look at, I've talked to Michelle a lot up there, and if you're 6 months behind in your electric bill, there's not much that they can do to help. But if you are willing to say, I need help, they'll help you for 1 or 2 months. And they'll write you a check that day. So now we're giving them the ability to be able to service more people just like that. I have found in giving away food that people are not willing to say, I'm hungry.
No, and people may have, take the opportunity to come, say if we had some system set up here, to come in and show that they are in need of having a bill where they're not going to go to social services. Because I can tell you from working in school, there were lots of kids that qualified for free and reduced lunch, and their parents would not sign them up for it because they felt like that was, and that's the group I worry about. The group that is already on the radar with social services, they're going to get provided for. The ones that are not going to go to that venue, but if we have a system set up here where they already come in and pay their taxes, that kind of thing, they might bring a bill in and say, I could use help for a couple of months.
So the short answer is yes, we can do that. And that goes to my third point that we need guidance on is how do you want to manage this, either through the EDA or through the chamber. The town is going with the chamber, so that could be an easy solution. The short of it is, as you read some of the back part of this with the town has set up a website. They have an application process in here. It's all here, good examples. All they have to do is change the names. Somebody puts it in, a town person verifies that, in this case, the business has a business license. Do they have a utility bill or not with the town? And then the town person pushes it over to the chamber. The chamber gets it, matches it against the town's criteria, and if it matches, then they'll send the town a note and say, we think this business qualifies, and we recommend you give them extra utilities and X for their lost business opportunity, or whatever. So we can have that, a very similar process to that. We just need to really decide which vehicle we want to use to administer that process.
How quickly do we have to decide that?
Well, the timeline that we've talked about, the sooner the better, because it is a process. I mean,
Because I'd like to, there's a specific person working on the chamber team who has done this in his professional career, and I would like to talk to him, just to get some insight into how the transactional thing works. So, because it may make sense for us just to use the chamber. I mean, I don't know why we would want to replicate it somewhere else. And I don't know that the EDA is a good idea, given the history that we have right now. I don't know that people would feel comfortable that, we're disseminating money out of the EDA. So I think we should get things settled there first.
So we got a lot of information in this handout tonight.
yes.
And I would suggest that maybe our next meeting is on the 21st, which, I'd like to get this thing up and running. And like I said, I had that same question that was answered, I think, with the broadband. If I understand correctly, that has to be completed by December 31 and paid for. We can't prepay that, is that correct?
Well, and this is my back and forth with Jason, right? And we both feel that reading all the documents and interpreting the CARES Act intent and talking with Melanie, that if broadband were set up by mid-October, before the start of their next quarter, then it would benefit students for that second, third, and fourth quarter of the next academic year. If we miss mid-October, now the kids are stuck at home. They're now behind in that second. They've already missed the first quarter. Now they're behind the second quarter. So
May not qualify.
I mean, technically, you could have it put in by the end of the school year while there's a couple of days left, and that would be a stretch. But now we're running into
What
it
you're
doesn't
talking
get
about
done.
basically is we shorten that time frame, December 31, possibly to mid-October. So what I would suggest possibly, since we got all this tonight, there's other questions, Ms. Oates wants to talk to somebody in the chamber, I think that's a good idea. So, even though I don't really want to do it, but maybe we can go ahead and have a special meeting on the 7th.
That's what I was.
This one single item only.
We'll add 4 or 5 more things by then.
Well, and
And then do that.
do we have to make that broadband just school student access? Can we just make it broadband?
For telecommuting?
No, when you read the CARES Act,
It's got the
it's
broadband,
very
it's got.
specific
Okay.
to expand distance learning because of COVID,
Okay,
in telework because of COVID, and it all has to be done.
well, the telework is what I was getting at.
Well, distance learning could be college students. My son came home from JMU and was,
The hard part is how do you identify the telework and prove, we can prove the location of the school students.
right.
And honestly, we could spend $5 million and not cover the whole county. To spend $600,000 is not going to be tough. If we can, that's an easy way for us to say, look, we strung along 2 miles of this road and we picked up 14 school kids. We can show without doubt, here was the benefit. How do you, it's the hard part is how do you prove, okay, who on this road was teleworking? How much were you teleworking? That's the hard part.
Once
That's
you
why.
string the line, anybody can join.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the reason we're stringing the line was to reach our public school children that we've identified that need it
Correct.
for their
Right.
distance learning.
Yeah. The benefit is everybody along that line can jump on it, though.
Right.
Doesn't matter who it is, but we're actually looking for a kid.
Yeah.
Mr. Kirschner, you look like you had a question. Did you have one? Or a
I don't
comment?
really as much have a question as I have a pile of comments based on what I've heard the discussion out here. Especially if you're gonna have a special meeting to make decisions on. I think I have some comments that should be considered that haven't been heard.
Well, I think that when we have the special meeting, we certainly can make comments on every topic that we've discussed.
I think it needs to be a period before then,
Yeah.
because, and I guess like we've done with emails and get on the website or whatever, submit them anyway or whatever, because that night, I won't say everything will be set in stone, but it'll be hard to maybe adjust it at that time. So there could be some development. I'm just trying to get this thing started. I mean, we could always have a meeting on the 7th or the 14th and have comments from the public and then do it on the 21st. But that pushes it back 2 more weeks.
My comment, Mr. Carter, we usually take off that for the fourth week. I encourage staff, I'm not scheduled currently to be off, but maybe have the work session night of the 14th, and Walt and I have been talking about some other items we want to talk about anyway, and hopefully get comments, get consensus, and then the 21st approve it, if that works.
So like I said, just trying to get it.
What the problem, is I've got to have these hard conversations with the broadband folks about, can you do it? What can you do? If we had $600,000, what can we do? What can you commit to making happen? And even with the 14, I've got 3 weeks to try to nail them down and give you something in writing to say, yes, we can do it. I think that certainly going the chamber route, it means we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Exactly.
That piece, I think, Rick can go talk, and, even on our business levels, we're very similar in percentages, Rick, to what the towns.
It's very close. Yeah. When you look at this chart on the very second page, this is a very, very similar numbers, percentages in those tiers that the town has.
So your real question right now is broadband.
Well,
Sounds like to me.
The real question right now is the broad support categories and how much you want to allot to each one.
Well, as long as we can adjust accordingly,
Right.
I have no trouble with what you've got. But if to be able to say broadband, that's a lot bigger question. And it may actually fall out of the fray just because Comcast or whoever says, I can't do it by December.
Yeah, and my fallback would be, okay, let's slide that down to the category below it.
Correct.
And then we internally, later, we get reimbursed for our valid expenses, and later we can allocate those funds for, could be a VATI grant match. There's some other opportunities for broadband, and I know, I've been talking to Comcast about the VATI grant, which is due in August. That's a longer fuse, it's a longer time frame, doesn't happen as quick, you've got more
It may
time.
be more in line for the broadband, what you're saying.
Could be. We've got to account for the use of these funds. The bigger thing is, even if let's say we don't spend $200,000 for broadband. Let's say we get a wireless company that can go on 2 existing towers, throw up antenna, be able to provide additional service, hit 100 kids, and teleworkers and everybody else. But maybe we slide the remainder of that money down to the category below it with the idea that later we will earmark that for future broadband activity that has a longer fuse, and we can work to try to get it implemented over maybe the next 12 to 18 months. Ideally, it'd be great to be able, to knock it out and go in there and say, hey, $40,000 a mile, we can do 15 miles. Let's pick the 15 most dense miles with school kids and houses and go in there and make those improvements. That'd be great. I just don't know can they put their subcontractors in the field and be able to string the wire and hook people up between now and October? That's the tough part.
No way.
I don't think that either. I mean, I'm an old project manager myself, and I believe Mr. Kushner is. The planning part won't be ready until.
Yeah.
I don't have either
Maybe.
experience and I can see where.
Actually, I think some of it is possible, and Comcast has told me, some of it's possible, it just depends on the how much and the timing.
Yeah, I'm not trying to take anything out of the energy of trying to make it happen.
Right.
Let's just be realistic about it.
Yeah,
You gotta
exactly.
be ready to make that decision to move it that quick.
So my comment, if I give you a contract by August 1 and, a commitment, can you have it installed, and what could you do in 2 months?
And if they don't do it, get your $638,000 back.
That's right.
Because they failed to meet their
I
contract.
think that's where you gotta have a pretty strong contract to make sure something like that is done.
Mr. Farrell, can you lobby the governor for because the governor's office clearly says that they want every school child to be able to access an online learning community. That's his initiative.
And that's why he's got the Betty grants are coming from the governor. He's plugged $50 million in.
66 million.
For this year, 50. For Betty grants, there's other opportunities for us to
For
apply.
the future years,
But
these grants.
it's a longer fuse. It takes longer to, get things lined up and get it installed.
So that's the reason this money then wasn't specifically geared for broadband?
No,
is
that's
because of those grants?
That's the federal saying, we want it to go directly to the coronavirus effort and making it that right now.
Right.
So some localities, Fauquier is one. Fauquier is installing additional antennas to expand the broadband footprint in Fauquier County. What, John, about $1 million they approved last week? Close to it.
Yeah, pretty close to. And then they also had done, earlier than that, they've been setting up temporary wireless situations.
Hotspots.
Yeah,
Yep.
all over the county, and using federal dollars to do that as sort of a Band-Aid until they can get something more long-term.
And that's possible here. Hotspots are possible here, are they not?
For instance,
You have cell service.
Right.
Infinity through Comcast, they have hotspots. There's a map you can go. They're all around the county, and they will offer free
They're
service.
using a modem.
Well, they've got, you can pick it up on your phone. They've got free service. They've got a map you can go to and click on. But again, you have to have that cable, that wire, hardwired for your
You
house.
could actually make a bus, a hotspot.
Yes.
Yeah, but you can't get the kids in because of social distancing.
No, I'm talking about a hotspot that'll transmit the.
Wi-Fi.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi transmits.
I thought you meant taking bus load
No,
kids
no,
to a
no.
hotspot.
Yeah,
We're getting way off.
Mr. Kushner, we're getting way into the weeds. Can you
I have
give-
to throw out one thing about this conversation I'm fully in support of broadband expansion. Because I probably benefit from it, because there's a school kid right down below me that Comcast doesn't come up to. But the flaw in this is that the CARES money is supposed to be to address the people who have had impact from it. And that is the businesses. The $638,000 you're talking about to address to broadband is not in response to COVID losses. It's an extra thing, and it only addresses 4% of the population. It's a big percentage of our money. So the governor's got a $66 million pot, I heard him, just like you did, that's going to be just for schools. And since the Comcast expansion issue is so questionable from a time frame standpoint, that maybe we need to refocus the thought process to use that money for how it was originally intended, for the businesses that were affected. And I hear comments about the nursing homes. They're businesses, so they can get money under our business category. We talk about utilities. We don't have utilities. The town has utilities because they have a separate enterprise fund for their water and electric. We don't have that out in the county. You've got private water, but we have electric. We talk about seniors that might have had problems with electric bills, but seniors didn't get affected mostly by COVID because they don't have jobs. They're getting Social Security and pensions. And if they've got shortcomings financially, they'll probably get it through DSS. If the people who need to access things through DSS don't want to participate because of the stigmatization, they're probably not going to provide an application for CARES money for it because it's the same stigmatization. So we don't have a category for utilities. We focus it on businesses. And we don't need to worry about the broadband because it's got a problem. May not even work. The time frames look terrible. You're right about being a project manager. You just don't throw this stuff out there like that and it's 5 months. Something as complex as that, because it's not just the planning of it, it's materials and different crews to do, and it's not the only thing they've got to do. So I agree with you. We need to focus on the businesses, the people who have been impacted by this. Yeah, we need to take care of the senior centers, but we can do that through business allocations. We don't need to have a utilities category because we don't have people in that category. The town does. And as it relates to who you have do this, well, how do we get around the bidding process for a public funded activity that we can just go sole source to somebody? Because I'm sure I'm the only one in this room that has a problem with the Chamber of Commerce, but they've had some legal problems here in the past that makes them kind of iffy, where with the EDA, they're a reconstituted board and organization that has rebuilt their reputation. So those are some things that ran through my mind sitting here that I thought might contribute to the conversation. I'll sit back down.
Mr. Kirchner, I'm happy to, if you send me an email, just listing your bullet points. We're gonna be obviously talking about this stuff. And we've got a very short window to do this. So I'm welcome. I mean, I would welcome any comments that you have.
I also heard from Rick, I mean, I got a copy of the questions, the frequently asked questions. And there was a question there on whether they were going to cover broadband.
Yeah.
That still hasn't been resolved as far as I understand. That was just a week ago and it may have been fixed since then. But we got a lot of iffy stuff with the broadband.
Let us move on. Thank you, Rick. I'm sorry. Do you have something else? I mean, I do not want to take anything away from you at all.
So just so I understand, we're going to review this. We're going to have a special meeting on the 7th.
No, I think we're talking about having a work session.
A work session? Okay.
And then have this on the 21st.
Yeah, work session
Yeah,
on the 14th.
On the 14th?
And then voting on it on the 21st.
And I think we'll know the answer on broadband. Can anything be done and actually be implemented in some type of time frame to be able to make it happen? I think that's the operative word there, if you want to do it. If it can't, don't even consider it. If you can, you still consider
And as
it.
far as utilities go, the people in the county still have to pay Rappahannock Electric.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it may or may not be. Yeah, so it's still appropriate.
And again, I would say this, and I
Didn't
know.
get affected by COVID though, it's just normal expense.
And I would say, and I think you could, again, the 20,000 we get from the state doesn't even go close to helping. I think you've got more, and talking to Deanna, we've got more people that are struggling. If we have some other group that can distribute that, we can do that too. But I think the need will be there, just like it is in town. The town has experienced significant drop off. Yeah, and it helps the town, obviously, because it's paying their electric bills, right? Bringing in revenue, it's coming back to them. For us, it doesn't come back, but it helps those folks for some reason if they lost. And granted, they lost their job, their unemployment's there, there's other avenues, the stimulus checks, there's other avenues they had. It's just an option of whether or not, and it doesn't have to be 106,000, maybe it's 50. I just want to get from Deanna, what would that look like if we did something like that? How many people do you think how many people normally apply? How many people do you think would be out there that need support with their, if you started running a few ads, we didn't run the ads because we don't have the money. $20,000 for a county of 40,000 people doesn't go far.
Well, I'm looking at the list here and the number of businesses, and there are quite a few. I mean, 239 that are under the $15,000 threshold, 270 under the $15,000 threshold. That's a lot of small businesses, very small businesses. And then 199 that are in between, and we're talking about gross sales, is that what these numbers are?
Yeah, so yeah, a lot of those under 15 may be somebody,
Is an independent
independent contractor, or I cut hair and I only do it at my house and I have one seat and some of that
Right.
stuff.
Okay.
Mr. Shiraki, have you been understanding what we're trying to accomplish?
Yes, but I just wanted to confirm that there was no consensus on the categories, there was no consensus on the percentages assigned to the categories, and there was no consensus on the management of the program. There was just consensus to push it to a work session on July 14th.
And if you have other ideas for categories, and I'm certainly watch whatever all the other localities are doing, if you have additional ideas, please forward those to Rick and we can
And me.
throw it on the wall and see if it sticks.
So, just for comparison with the town, they're focused on small business, utilities and the revenue, and some, little bit for the town, to offset some of their costs, not lost revenue. And then the utilities piece for individual account holder citizens, that's kind of where they're going with this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Rick.
You're very welcome.
You did a good job.
Yes, very
Thank you,
well
Mr.
organized.
Kushner, I appreciate it.
Can I make a suggestion that we think about for a work session to look at the possibility of having a broadband committee? I know I've got several people in my area with a lot of knowledge in that area that would like to have a committee to look at different options of broadband and so forth.
Certainly open to that.
Couldn't hurt.
No.
We going into closed? Is
Yep.
that?
You want to read us into?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Okay.
I move the board enter into a closed meeting under the provisions of section 2.2-3711A1 of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act for the discussion or consideration of the assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, and resignation of a specific public officer of the public body. I further move that discussion be limited to emergency management services. And I don't read the second one, right? Because we no longer are doing that one in closed. Okay. We're in closed session now.
Was there a second?
Oh, second, yeah, I'm sorry.
Any discussion? Can we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Carter?
Aye.
Ms. Oates?
Aye.
Mr. Meany?
Aye.
Ms. Cullors? Aye. Mr. Fox?
We are in closed session.